appears that Westborough TV's all set. So if all who are able can rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. So I think today, why do I feel as though I can't? Can you hear me though?
I can hear you. We're good for the video.
You can't, or is it just?
We're good for video.
Yeah, I can hear everybody tapping.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry about
Okay.
that.
So it appears that
Thank you.
I am heard. So we're going to start, I guess, today with superintendent's update. So I'll hand it to Allison here.
And I'm going to immediately hand it off to our Director of Human Resources, Tammy Costello, who is here to tell us a little bit about our last season of hiring. So I'm going to pull up her presentation here.
Hello.
Good evening.
Is it on? Can you hear me?
I think it's
Yeah.
on for the
Is there any
video.
way to raise the volume on him?
I don't think it's actually
Is that
been
better?
programmed over there.
Well, we can hear you.
You
We-
can hear me?
I mean,
Yeah.
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 I'll talk loud. I tend to be loud anyways. Thank you for having me. Get closer? Okay. Thank you for having me here. I love talking about staffing. It's my favorite time of the year when we get to hire for our new school year. We had a interesting and exciting year in that we started our hiring season a month earlier, so we posted for our new positions in March, which I think really helped. We grabbed a few excellent staff in that first month. We did have less hiring than normal of external staff. However, one of the things that was really encouraging to see was that we had 3 of our schools, the high school, Gibbons, and Fales, donate or transfer staff to other schools that had greater needs. So that was this great recycling of staff, cost effective, and from a human resources standpoint, it's exactly what I like to see because you're allocating resources appropriately and where they're needed. So I always like to start talking about the summer programs because while everyone's away on vacation having fun, we were taking care of 763 Westborough kids in all these different camps. So we had the ESY, which we have every year, the special education summer program, the English language learners. Gibbons does their own. Community ed was rocking all summer long with their different camps. So we had a very successful summer to kick off the new year. This year, I think everyone's aware that we hired 3 new administrators, 2 to cabinet. We hired Matt Mailer as our new assistant superintendent and Meg Garvey as our new director of student services. That was a big part of the spring. And we also hired a new student services coordinator who took Meg's place at Gibbons, Catherine Tagliatella. This just to give you an idea of some of the permanent or one-year classroom staff that was hired. Just to show you the numbers a little bit, this is basically our professional staff and our paraeducators and tutors. So we hired almost 42 people. Why 0.6? Because we hired a 0.6 French teacher for the high school. Just to give you an idea of how we hired, some of the talking points, we had 12 internal moves, which is a lot of internal movement. Again, I like to see that. It gets a little bit complicated and it's like a big jigsaw puzzle trying to put everyone in the right piece, but or in the right place, but that worked out really well. We did have a special education paraeducator who became an ESL teacher, was promoted to an ESL teacher at the high school, and she has years of teaching experience in Russia, so that was a great hire that we're very excited about. We had 2 teachers that were on one-year contracts this past year that were hired into permanent positions. And then just to give you a little bit of a breakdown, we hired 20.1 teachers that are new to WPS. So we hired more than that, but there was internal hires. But we have basically 20 people that are new to Westborough. We hired 4 educators of color, which is basically 20% of what we hired. And then I always like to give the breakdown of our teachers' experience. So 5%, just one person, it is her first job. But then we have about 85% of the teachers are between 2 and 9 years. And then we have 2 teachers that have 10 years or more experience. Last year, when I came at this time, I always like to talk about retention, and I had promised you that I would start to give you some data. So here's the past 4 years. I'm happy to say that our retention was better this year. 29 teachers separated, but when you think about that, that's 7% of our teaching staff turned over, but that's resignations, retirees, and we had a few non-renewals. So we're back to where we were 2 years ago. Just mathematically, that's how the numbers work out. I'm not trying to make it easy, but we're back to 93% retention, which I think is really good. That's a high retention rate. We also hired over the summer 32 long-term subs and support staff. So we have right now about 8 teachers that are either out on maternity leave or we have a few medical leaves. So we hired long-term subs for that. Community Ed hired 14 new staff for the before and after school programs. We hired a new custodian. We have a new food services director. We've hired 11 noon aides, which is a position that turns over frequently because it's a very short position. It's only 2 hours a day. So we have a hard time keeping those, but we're working on it. We hired 2 administrative assistants, and Subhashri in my office has been hiring subs since mid-July, and she's hired 18 already. So we've had some really good numbers of absences that have been filled. We don't like to see absences unfilled where we have to, run around and take care of that. This is my favorite guy. This is what the summer was like. I always like to do it. I love this meme. A big shout out to the business office and technology and student services and the custodial staff for onboarding the new staff and special education students and getting our schools shiny and ready for the new year. It takes a lot to open the schools, and about 89 to 90% of our staff are school year, but the other 10% are here in the summer getting it ready. And I was very happy to see this year that it was one of the best openings we've had. And I think a lot of that is a credit to all these people that work all summer, making sure the students have computers and students have their schedules. And I know schedules is a big thing for the principals, and hiring and onboarding. And so when all was said and done, over the summer we hired 76.6 permanent or temporary school year staff and 47 non-staff, what I call non-staff, because they're summer program. And we separated, which means not terminated as in fired, but they have left the district, 123 people. So every single person that leaves, we have to shut off their email addresses and get back their computers and all that. So that's pretty much what the summer was. It was very successful. Very proud to have worked here all summer, and we had a really great outcome. So what do we have left? We have our entire professional staff hired. All our teachers are hired. We have 1 long-term sub-Spanish teacher we're trying to find for the high school, but we have an option, but we're trying to find that. We have 2 para openings at Armstrong, and we have 1 custodian opening at Fales, and that's it for positions. So we're in really, really good shape.
Thank you.
That's it.
Great presentation.
Questions?
Yes, so I'm going to ask everyone if they have any questions. So let's start with Steve. Steve, any questions or comments?
No, I guess overall, what's the population of staff and teachers this year versus last?
Actually, I meant to point that out, so I will show you something right here. Let me go back. So right now, you can see the drop in the teacher count. This year, we're just under 417, and last year we were 424. So it's 7 less, which was from the budget cuts and some of the transferring of staff that we did.
Excellent.
Just a follow-up to that question, though, but we're still looking to hire a couple of those positions,
Yes.
right? How many were those total, actually? You just named like 3, I think?
Well, we're not hiring any more teachers because we're fully staffed, but we're hiring a long-term Spanish teacher for the high school.
Okay, so they
hopefully,
wouldn't be part of
and
that
2
unit
paras,
anyway.
but not Unit A. We're fully staffed right now.
Thank you. Jane?
No questions. Thanks so much for all of your work.
Thanks.
Yakub?
Yes, I have a few questions. I was curious about that number at Hastings. In one of the slides, you showed there's 14 hires. Looks much higher than the other ones. What's the reason for that?
So there was, we have more paraeducators at Hastings because of the student population, and we just had a lot of turnover there. So of those 14, 9 of them are paraeducators. So on this slide, I combined together paraeducators and teachers. So they're just, some of those positions are hard to keep filled, and this year Hastings got hit. This was the summer of Hastings hires, almost every other day.
Thank you. I have I'm curious about 2 things. So one is, are we still competitive district? Are we, do you feel like it's easy to find new hires?
Yeah, most of the positions, I was really pleased with the pools that we got. I think we hire competitively. We actually have a software program now that compares our salaries to other districts, and we're right where we need to be for those districts that we compare ourselves to. So the principals will make the offer to the teachers, and oftentimes they'll ask me, I was thinking this, and we'll go back and forth on salary. But for the most part, I think we're very competitive, and I can tell that by the number of people in the pools. I mean, there's a couple positions that are still really difficult to hire for, but I don't think that's just Westborough. Right now, it's really hard hiring special education teachers, especially intensive special education teachers are very hard to hire. And for whatever reason, right now, Spanish and the world languages are hard to hire for. Now, years ago, that wasn't the case. So maybe it's just this year, but those were the 2 that we had a hard time. We also hired a Mandarin teacher, which I thought, oh, we're never going to hire this. And we hired, and we got a great teacher, so that worked out well.
All right, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Tim, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a few quick questions. To start, I know you were talking a little bit about the reshuffling. I just want to confirm, it sounds like that was separate from the positions that had to be cut for budgetary reasons. Is that right?
Yeah, some of the positions that we cut for budgetary reasons in order to keep staff, good staff, we transferred them to positions that had opened. So we did cut positions through the budget process, but we didn't have to cut as many people because of retirements and people that had left. So we took people from certain schools and we moved them to different schools into those spots while maintaining the commitment and to have 7 less teachers, and we do.
Gotcha. And then just a follow-up question. So it sounds like then the long-term ambition would be to restore those teachers eventually, and this was something done for budgetary reasons?
I think every year is different. So we obviously have to look at our budget and see where we're at. I think we did a nice job putting resources where we need them, and every year is different as far as needs. So each year it's hard to say. I mean, I don't foresee people that were moved from one school to another going back to those schools because I think they're settling in their new schools. But it really depends on who retires, who leaves. Those are the types of things we look at. But one thing that we are doing now is every time we have someone leaving unexpectedly, a resignation, Allison and I sit down and say, do we need to fill this position? Can we shuffle people around? So that's become much more the norm.
I'd say I could jump in on that a little bit too, Tim. I mean, 5 of those positions that were reduced were enrollment based. So places where we could essentially cut the position and still stay well within class size guidelines, which was just fiscal responsibility, I think. And we'll continue to do that and really monitor that as we go. So if enrollment ticks back up, then absolutely we want to bring back people so we can make sure we're maintaining good ratios in the classrooms that work for kids.
Yeah.
Definitely makes sense. And then just one last question. I'm curious, you said that this year we've had one of the best openings that we've had under
Yes.
since you've been here. I'm just curious why that is, like why you say that.
Well, I would like to say it's because of the summer staff that work so hard, but I do think that a lot of it has to do with that, but it also has to do with a lot of our full year staff have been here a long time. We haven't had much attrition at all with full year staff. So you have people that have been doing this a very long time in finance and in data and HR. And so I think that helps. And then I also think, obviously the principals do a stellar job getting their schools ready and the schedules. It's a big deal, the schedules. I personally have never done a schedule, but from what I hear, it's a really, really big deal. So I'm sure they did an excellent job with that as well.
Thank you.
Great. Tim, actually, that was the question I had too about the opening, because you sounded excited about that. But I did want to take a second to say, with respect to, as a follow-up to what Tim mentioned regarding the cuts, I want to thank Allison and the entire team who have really stepped up with, taking the responsibility of being fiscally responsible and really making sure that before we even get to the question of where the cuts can be had for the town and et cetera, it's being done in the back end, and you guys have really displayed that from last year's exercise. So I really appreciate that, and I know that everyone's going to continue to do that. So that's one thing. The other question I had was, which is sort of a question I have for you every year, is regarding the diverse hires and how that's going in terms of our initiatives that we're taking. I know that we've talked about fairs that you attend or different things that you've done, and how is that whole picture looking?
I was pleased with the results numbers wise that we had this summer.
You mean applications? Do you mean applications?
I mean applications as well as hires. Okay. So we had 4 hires, people of color, which was stellar considering that we hired 20 people, or 21. So that, that was nice to see and exciting to see. The biggest challenge continues to be, and we continue to work on it, is to actually get the applicants, the people to want to come here, the diverse population. So that's always been the hardest. It's not, I think we do a really good job of, we don't even have to sell ourselves. We're an excellent district. So when people come and they put their application in, they've done their homework, most people, when they apply for a job. So it's really about getting those applicants, the numbers to increase. Now, you can't always tell by reading an application if the person is a person of color. Sometimes they choose to answer or not. But I do know that the principals, we've done a lot of work on how we look at resumes and how we look at the whole picture of the resume. And we don't, we talk about value add and how is this applicant going to add to the community potentially before you interview them. And it's something that we continue to work on. And I don't think it's anything that we will ever stop, because it's going to have to continue for a long time. So,
well, can you speak a little bit more to that in terms of what the different strategies are that are being employed to try this? So, I mean, one thing that I want to make clear, I think, I'm sure I speak for the entire committee when we're saying that while diverse hires are a priority, it's equally as important to be hiring experienced and well-trained individuals. So we're not compromising one for another. It's just we'd like to add. Right?
Yes. I mean, I've always thought, and I've said this for 4 years now, this is my 4th time here, that just a personal goal of mine, never mind professional, is I think it's important for our students, our student population, to look up and see someone that represents them. And I think we have more of that, but we certainly don't have enough. So it's something that we continue to work on. As far as strategies, again, we talk about it in our leadership meetings. We talk about we had someone come in and talk about how to, what I call, vet an application, looking at the application. One of the things that we try and do is yes, you have to look at the experience level, and yes, you have to look at what they bring to the table, but we have to look at the whole picture. And I think we're doing better with that, but the challenge continues to be is actually getting a diverse population to apply here. We're on public transportation, but not great public transportation. It's expensive to live here. So these are some of the things. And one of the biggest things that we see is commute. People want a shorter commute, especially since COVID. So we've had people leave because the commute is longer than what they want, and people are valuing their time at home. So I appreciate your question. It's not a quick fix, but I will say it's something we continue to work on constantly.
Sure. So I appreciate that. And I think that the past couple of years you've presented, and I have heard similar things. I just, and I don't know about others, but I would love to see some sort of strategies that are, that are written strategies that we can look at and say, hey, these things are being done. And specifically with respect to attracting applicants, right? So we understand that we're not getting many applicants, and that's why we're also not able to have many hires. But it would be nice to have some formal strategy in place. And I'm sure, like you said, this is not foreign for other communities, especially suburbs, our Northborough, Southborough, et cetera, are probably facing similar things. But I think it would be nice to have, to be able to really work on that, because I think that once one town is able to figure it out, then it's going to be useful for everyone.
It'd be interesting to sort of bring and show you some of the data that is out there about pipeline. There's a pipeline issue with this. So really, there just aren't as many folks getting into education programs who are interested in getting into teaching, who represent a more diverse community. And so I think our most promising strategies are actually going to be working with our own students and encouraging kids to get into education and perhaps someday come back to us and teach here, which seems to be a phenomenon here. We have quite a few educators in the district who came through school here, who grew up in the community, who had a kind of a very positive experience and want to kind of give back. And I think that could be a real potential.
Great. Yeah.
A potential. That's sort of the grow your own strategy is how it's described out there in the world.
Yeah. And I mentioned this paraeducator, special education paraeducator, who we promoted to an ESL teacher, and she is not an educator of color. She's from Russia, but she brings an amazing wealth of experience. She taught for 20 years in Russia, and she has this love of working with students that English isn't their first language. And we worked with her, a little bit this summer to get licensed, and we really worked on that particular hire in a number of ways. And it's just very encouraging to see, because she's one of those people that I talk about, think outside the box, think about the value add, think about what this person is bringing to the table. So that's just a little...
And the only last other thing that I wanted to mention was when what Yaku pointed out about the 18 employees who have either retired or left from Hastings. It was Hastings, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to make sure, you're doing your exit interviews, you're doing all of that. We just want to make sure there's nothing going on per se. I know you're saying it's probably just happened to be a bad summer for them, but I just want to make sure
it was, a few years ago, it was Gibbons. Jack and I spoke almost every day. Last year was Mill Pond. So it just seems to sort of go around. But I do watch trends when people leave. One of the things is, paraeducators and NUNAIDs, we are competitive in what we pay, but they're not the same as teachers who are getting a salary. So we are going into negotiations this year, and we'll look at that again. I think our rates are very competitive, but they are notoriously, not just here, positions that turn over more frequently.
Do we have a pipeline for like a good pipeline for paras into teaching positions?
We do. We have a pipeline. Every year we have about 2 teachers that are interested, 2 paraeducators that we're helping through the system. One of the things that makes it a little bit more challenging is they have to get a degree, and they eventually have to get a master's. So sometimes that's a little bit of a barrier. But yes, we have a pipeline, and we also have the principals will identify paraeducators that are interested, and then we'll help them through the process. We hired someone at Hastings, the librarian left, the media specialist, the librarian. And there was a woman who had been substituting for us for several years, and she wanted to be a librarian, a teacher. And so I have been speaking to this woman for years, giving her advice like, you should do this, you should go to this program. I heard this program was good. And we just hired her. And that makes me feel very, very good, because she was someone I started talking to in 2022, right after I had started. And she went out and got her degree, and she got her license, and she just got hired at Hastings. So that's another kind of little fun fact.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. Anyone else with any questions or anything? Okay, thank you, Tammy, so
Thank
much for
you.
coming.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
So next,
Next up, I have a couple other items here. One is relatively brief. It's informational. There's no, I don't think there's any vote on this today. I linked a letter that I received from Roger Anderson, who's the wellness director, about forming a wellness advisory committee. This is actually something that we're supposed to have by law. So we're kind of getting back to something that's compliant, but it's also just a great thing to have for the district. Essentially, the role of the committee, and it's a representative committee with both folks internally, but also community representation, is to look at our policies and practices around wellness. And it's for everyone, for students and for staff. And they make recommendations to update policy. So essentially how this would work is we would pull people together. That team would meet several times during the year, look at our existing policies, make recommendations for revision. Those would come to you as the folks who vote policy at the end of that cycle. So I appreciate Roger taking initiative to get this off the ground. I know he is particularly interested because of the notion of digital wellness being sort of folded into this universe. So a lot of the work of these committees it's very broad. It focuses on what happens in health class and PE, but also on policies within the school around snacks. It talks about the school lunch programs and breakfast programs. It's pretty wide ranging. And now the kind of digital universe is coming into play too. So it should be a fun and interesting group.
that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about, kind of do a quick overview here. I know I shared this with you at our meeting last week, but I'll kind of go through it again for the viewing public here, since that was a retreat, and talk a little bit about the strategic priorities document that the team has worked to build. So starting last year, really toward the end of the year, once the entry process was sort of wrapped up and I had entry findings, we had conversations with the district leadership team about how these things start to translate into new priorities for the district and a new strategy for the district. And then over the summer, the core leadership team, which includes the cabinet, the district leaders, but also the building leaders, like principals and assistant principals, and a few of our K-12 directors, we met for 2 days in a retreat and spent that time pulling together a draft document, and that's what you see here. And in terms of navigation of the draft, the top page, it actually runs to 2 pages, is kind of a great overview snapshot. It's designed to give people who just want to sort of see generally what are you all up to in the Westborough Public Schools. This should give folks a high-level glimpse at kind of who we are and what we're doing. It includes information about vision, mission, core values, but it also talks about what are these sort of big buckets, our strategic objectives that we're focused on over the next 3 to 5 years, and then specific goals for this year. And then, in terms of orientation, if someone wants to get into the weeds a little bit, they can click in and get action plans that live behind those goals. And again, this is all very drafty. We're really just kind of hashed it all out this summer, and now we're in feedback process. And we're clear we know we have work to do on this still, especially around the benchmarks and the measurability of those benchmarks, as well as looking at timing. I think some of the timelines we're going to have to really look at in more granular detail. A lot of these things just say sometime this school year. I'd like to have a little more clarity about when we're hoping to wrap things up, and also about the volume of the work. Is this work that we can truly get done this year, or are there things we're going to have to turf to next year? So as you go through, you can see some of the specific actions that we're hoping to engage in. Just to give people a quick overview. Whoop, sorry. I did a thing today. This was fun for me. You know that one of the things we're working on is learning around artificial intelligence. Well, this was mine. for today. There's a program out there called Gamma that you can drop a document into, and it makes a snazzy slideshow, not including the pictures of our students, those are separate, but and so I played around with it, and here's what it came up with. So it makes kind of very nice, neat things, and I know you probably all know this if you're in industry. I'm like used to slogging through Google Slides, so this is a revelation for me. Jerry was with our AI group of students this summer, so he probably has more experience than all of us together, I bet. So really, the overall goal, like, how do we help kids reach their potential? We talked a lot. We spent hours actually really thinking about vision, mission, and values. Vision being, when we look ahead in the 3 to 5 year horizon, what do we want for students? And kind of where we landed is this notion of what do we want our students to look like as people who are leaving our schools and going out into the world. That they're healthy, curious, kind, and productive, and that they're committed to improvement and growth. There was this thing that came through about work ethic and really wanting to instill in kids a desire for kind of that you can keep getting better. And an interest in really instilling in kids this notion that you can make your life better, your community better, and the world better. So there's a real civic mindedness in this community. I think it's reflected in the vision that the leadership team drafted. Mission is going to be more similar to a lot of other places. I mean, what we do is education, but I think the spin on it here has to do with the how. We talked about having kids really reach their potential as creative thinkers, collaborative problem solvers, and compassionate, engaged citizens. And again, that sort of citizenship and civic engagement came through here, but also this idea of helping teach kids to work together and how to think in an interesting way, because we really believe that's the quality that's going to help our students when they go out in the world. Core values, we talked a lot about this as well, and there were many things, but we kind of distilled them down to 3 sort of discrete categories. One is academic, right? Academic excellence and continuous improvement. This notion that we are at our core a place where we want to put a high value on academic endeavors. Alongside that, though, wellness and balance. If our students are nose to the grindstone 24 hours a day, every day, they're going to be missing large parts of what it means to be a kid. And being able to have students feel like they have a deep investment in school, but also in their friends and their family and their extracurriculars and their faith, all the things that make a whole life. And then finally, this notion of belonging for all. This is a community that has such great diversity, and trying to think about how do we continue to work to make sure everyone sort of feels that they matter here, that they know that when you are a part of this place, you are part of this place. So strategic objectives in those 4 buckets. You saw academic excellence, caring and supportive schools, connected community, and financial and operational stability. And really, in each part, we've got kind of a high-level goal that's reflected here. So our academic goal is always about strengthening what we do for curriculum and instruction, and really thinking about how we can maintain these very high expectations for everyone. On the caring and supportive schools, again, this focuses on safety and belonging. How do we make sure everybody feels like they have a place here? Connected community is one of the most interesting ones. I think we talked a bit about the fact of really wanting to revitalize ways that we connect with different community groups, as well as the way those community groups connect with each other. We have an interesting place in the community in that a lot of people look to the schools and a lot of people are connected to the schools, so we can sort of serve as a magnet for people to come together in productive and thoughtful ways. And then finally, thinking about long-term sort of financial and operational stability. We want to be planning proactively, communicating as transparently as we can, because this is a community that invests so much in education, and we need to maintain that sort of investment and trust. So these slides show some of the details. Under academics, we're looking at improving something that we talk about in the business as coherence. how does the program hang together, which kind of works in both horizontal and vertical ways. So horizontally, if you go to any third grade class anywhere in the district, will you see kind of common curriculum and activities happening? Will you see the same commitment to the same types of learning outcomes? But it's also vertical. Does it make sense each year over year? So as kids move from third to fourth, for example, is the rigor ratcheting up appropriately, and are the things they're learning in fourth grade building on what they learned in third grade? Expanding support, a lot of what we're looking at here is kind of twofold. There's thought about how do we expand options and make more things available for more kids, more pathways. We've talked here about AP and wanting to open up and have more AP options for kids at the high school. Additionally, thinking about how do we do more to support our English language learners. So those are all in that bucket. And then refining technology. A lot of that's focused on AI. How do we get our arms around this crazy new world that we're in? How do we harness it productively and safely? How do we help students learn to use it productively and safely? And how do we help students in a way that doesn't undermine their long-term learning? I think that's the thing we're all kind of questioning right now. How do we do this in a way that's developmentally good for kids?
Yes.
And again, we've talked a little bit about this. In the caring and supportive schools bucket, we're looking to expand a focus on wellness to include that digital component as well. And also thinking about attendance. We have, as I've mentioned in the past, since the pandemic, not just here, everywhere, we have seen school attendance take a hit. And one of the things we know is coming to school on a regular basis is a huge part of success. Just getting your foot through the door makes a big difference for kids. And so how do we help support students who are struggling with attendance? And then finally, thinking about removing barriers to learning. The district has invested a lot in an approach to thinking about lesson planning called universal design, where it's really thinking about varying the kind of means of access for different kids. It's a notion that grows out of architecture, which I think is kind of cool. And you can see, I think what I like about architecture is the examples are beautiful, right? You can go to the front of a museum where a staircase has designed to be both functional for more people and kind of architecturally lovely. And that's really trying to pull that notion into education. How do we design what happens in class in a way that gives more kids access without lowering the standards? Alongside that, culturally responsive practice. That's thinking about our students and everything that they bring to the table, their identity and their history and their story and their strengths. How do we make sure that we're teaching to everyone, not just kind of the students of the past who were predominantly white? I think that's really important to say out loud, that our work is really to teach every child, and to do that we need to know every child and put practices in place that are responsive to every child. On the community front, and I mentioned this before, but some of the more concrete details are thinking about revitalizing some community groups like CPAC, which is the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, LPAC, which is the English Language Learners Parent Advisory Council, and other parent-run organizations, and really trying to help those groups have a voice and feel like they have a place in terms of helping us get better at our jobs too. And then, we've talked in the past about financial and operational safety. I want to give a shout out to the Westborough Police Department here. This was the motorcycle thing from earlier this week. It's kind of a cool program. So just enhancing our budgetary transparency so that people know what we're doing and why we're doing it. But also thinking ahead, we have work to do in terms of redrawing some of our boundaries for K-3 schools. We are starting that in earnest this week. Our committee meets tomorrow to look at 2 of the proposals from consultants for that work, and we'll be bringing updates forward to you as we go. Engaging in some really long-range financial planning, especially with regard to capital. Anita and I are sitting down tomorrow, and we'll be meeting with Yakub, who's the representative to the CEFC, and really thinking ahead and looking at what are the needs, how do we prioritize those needs. So we'll be bringing that back to you soon too. And then, and I've talked about this before, and this is why the photo got a spot here, is thinking about safety planning. You know, what are the processes we need to have in place to keep things as safe as we possibly can. I feel very fortunate to be in this community where we have great partnerships with police and fire, and I think that's huge. I mean, that makes a big difference. They are the experts, and I definitely defer to them in these matters. But anything we can do structurally or in terms of routines and training, we want to take those steps. That's it. That's kind of the snapshot overview. And, you know, I put this together in this form to make it, you know, I know you've already seen it, but to make it more digestible for public. And yeah, and that was Gamma, which is kind of cool new AI tool. So I am learning. If you have thoughts or suggestions on that front, I will continue to.
Thank you for that presentation.
No problem.
I'll just go through and ask if anyone has any questions or just comments. So I'll start with you, Steve. No, Jane.
This was great. I really enjoyed reading it, and I think it's ambitious but wonderful. I just had one comment and one question. So under the caring and supportive schools, what's a flight plan at Mill Pond?
It's a good question. So it's last year the administration there kind of rolled out. It's sort of like I'm trying to think of. It's a little bit of a branding notion. So it's sort of this idea of you have to check all these boxes in order to be a flying through the school citizen in the school. So it's cute. I mean, the idea is students have to basically meet competencies so that they really understand how to navigate this big, busy place. And it's really a response to concerns that were raised about, how do we help a large incoming group of students, and especially post-pandemic, to kind of develop good norms for how they're going to interact with themselves and with their teachers and other staff in the school. How they're going to treat the school, how they're going to move in the hallways, things like that. It's all great stuff, routines and structures that help keep the place safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
And then I really like the connected community focus. I think that's wonderful, and I think it there was, I don't remember exactly where it was in this, but in another part of the strategic plan, it was probably in academics, expanding experiential learning and those sorts of alternative ways of teaching or experiences for our students. And I think the connected community might
help with that.
Might link to that.
Sure.
And if we could try to make it linked to that, internship opportunities or other experiential learning. But I really like that connected community component.
I like that too. And honestly, this community has so much expertise in it.
Mm-hmm.
I had a wonderful meeting just recently with Kendra, who's the new senior services director, and she talked about the possibility of kind of like mentorships with some of the seniors for high school students who have questions about, I think I might want to be, a doctor, but I'm not sure. And the great thing about folks in retirement is they have some time, and if they were passionate about what they did, it gives them an opportunity to share it with students, and students can learn from, people right here in the community. So.
That's great. And putting it in our strategic plan really, it just shows our commitment. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jakub?
Yes, thank you for the presentation and the plan. And I'll repeat what I said last week. I really appreciate how easy it is to navigate this. It's very well presented. I love the very clear benchmarks of success to every action step. I appreciate the strong emphasis up front on the academic excellence, in addition to the other goals, obviously. But I do feel the same way that that is number one priority. I also see through the action steps. I reviewed a lot of them. I see certain concerns that were brought up by the residents, and they show up in those action steps.
Yes.
Like for instance, reviewing the use of technology.
Yep.
I really appreciate it. I hope the people that that came here in the past year, they will find different action steps that are relevant to the concerns they had. I think it shows that you listen and that you're taking a methodical approach to address these concerns. So I really like that. Some action steps are very small, easy to accomplish. I really like the one where you're looking into adding pronunciation of the student names. I think
Yes.
that's brilliant. With our diverse population in school, I think that'd be really helpful. I almost wish that the parents could see pronunciation of their
peers.
children's peers,
Yes.
because the kids know how to pronounce their names. The parents often struggle. I know that from my own experience.
Yes.
I'm curious, which of these action steps, so like those tiniest bullets, do you find the most challenging, that maybe that carry some big changes to the way the whole system operates?
Yes, that's such a good question. I think there are some pieces in here about examining fundamentally how we respond when students are struggling, looking at our tiered support systems, our TST, which is teacher support team. Those changes are hard to achieve and also very potentially impactful. And all of that, I think, requires more of a data focus, being able to really marshal what we have in terms of performance data, look at it, and make adjustments and kind of be both proactive in terms of building out different types of supports that are available, but then also kind of nimble based on an individual student's needs. So that's an interesting one to me. I do also think the work around, the work of being more culturally responsive is challenging. It tends to feel politically fraught. I don't know why it kind of got that way. I think, honestly, I think a lot of it comes down to people just sort of learning about each other, and that doesn't seem that crazy to me. And I think, I sense there's a real commitment here to continuing to move that work forward, which I'm proud of. And I think it's work that has to be done sort of openly and honestly and carefully, right? So that it doesn't become politicized and make people feel, like they're winners and losers. That's, I think, where things go off the rails. So I think that part's interesting. There are more that I think are challenging there, but those are two
Sure.
that can't come to mind first.
It will
yeah.
take time.
Yeah. Yes. There's a lot in there, I think.
One last question. Just what's your plan for like monitoring the progress on this in the next year?
That's a great question. And actually, so full disclosure, I was today at, so I'm still attending the new superintendent's induction program. So I was in a full day workshop today with second year superintendents from around the state. And we were talking about this. And I had my conception of it, because of the size and experience of our team, was to sort of build that time into leadership team meetings. So we would, every meeting or every other meeting, do a check-in. It's kind of my way of sort of putting this thing right back in the center of people's attention, when oftentimes for building leaders or for directors, there's so much coming at them all the time. It's easy to get caught up in whatever fire needs to get put out. So that's one way. I do think another super in a bigger district was talking about essentially forming committees that really take on different pieces. So that's an idea. I'll just talk with the team about that. What do they want to do? How do they want to approach it? Because they have to buy in, because I can't do it all and Matt can't do it all. It's going to have to be like a whole team-wide approach. So we'll have to figure that out together.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Tim.
Thank you for the presentation. I thought this was incredibly comprehensive, and I just really enjoyed going through all the different points, and I think that this was just a fantastic job. I just want to make sure, so I know you're talking a little bit about how there's maybe some area in the benchmarks for success and making sure that those are all in line. Obviously, those are going to change, and I see that there's already a space in here to update as progress is made.
Yeah.
Is the plan, would you say, for this to be a living document overall? Like, do you see the action steps also changing over time?
Yes, definitely. I think one of the things that we will need to do is, as we get into work, if it's clear that we need to pivot, that's the great thing about this type of format. I didn't want like a very long, many pages. It's hyperlinked and it's live and it's in Google. So as we learn, if we discover, oh, there's a better way to do that, we can make that change. And I think that is how the team here is used to operating. They do a lot of that already, so it will feel pretty natural for them.
And just maybe as a specific example as well, so I am looking currently in the caring and supportive schools.
Yes.
And so for an example, one of the action steps is talking about gathering data on student screen time.
Yes.
And so for something like this, obviously, that's a very important first step, is to understand the issue. And then with the intention then to be, to update that action step once that's complete, to be, and then, use this data in some kind of way, or?
Right. Oh, in terms of the documenting it here?
Yeah.
That's a great question. And I think we'll have to sort of figure out what we do about that, whether that's a reporting out or an update. One thing I would want to be careful about is that our time is really spent doing the work, not documenting, not continually documenting, and that can become a thing if we're not careful. So, but I hear you. I think that's another one we can kind of wrestle a little bit with how to best do that with the team. But yeah.
And then I'd just be curious, at a very high level, are you just able to comment at all about the past strategic plan and how this maybe diverged or was similar to what it was previously?
I think it's very informed by what has been there in the past. There's a real congruity. Thank you. I was like, I got all tangled up on that one. Congruity between the two. In that, like, a lot of the same themes are there, and some of those same things that had already started. For example, the goal that Jane pointed to, which is about expanding different pathways. That's been sort of hanging around, and we wanted to kind of really push that forward. So we did draw things in that were in the prior plan. I think this is a little bit more streamlined, and it will evolve. So this year we will iterate this each year, so the action steps will change and we can kind of get into a routine. And if the format isn't quite working, we'll shift and do something else that works better. That's part of what I like about it. I think the version of a strategic plan that you sort of build and then you kind of tick through all the boxes and it's more static, it feels harder, more unwieldy to me. So I kind of like that change about this. But by and large part, I think there's a lot that grew out of the prior plan. It was really excellent work. And so it's a privilege to have shown up and have that all in place. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think this is excellent, and I really thought it was very, I'll echo what I think Yakub said, which is that it's very easy to read, very easy to understand and connect with, and I really appreciate that. I think, like, just to start off, I've been thinking since I saw it the last time that I really like your vision statement a lot. It just seems that there was a lot of thought put into it. I can't get beyond, like, I just love the word curious, and I know that I don't know, I haven't seen that before in this type of setting, and it's just such a obvious term, but you don't see it as part of your goals and vision, generally speaking, and I just think that, like, there's so many dimensions to that, and I really appreciate it. So I enjoyed looking at this. I'm also really eager to see how it evolves over time, how you're updating the action items and, coming up with whether it be revisions to this or whether it just be updates. I think it's going to be interesting, and I just love the way that you formatted it. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions or comments on this?
Actually, one more. I realized there are no action items or goals associated with the facilities. We had them in the previous plan, so I'm just curious, do you have a different approach for that?
Yeah, I think there is an action about long-range planning, and that's sort of a broad strokes version of that, which I think we really, we're committed to trying to do. There are real needs out there in the facilities universe. We've been talking about them this week, and we'll be bringing those back to you as a committee very shortly. That's fun and interesting work. It tends to be a little daunting work, right? But I think we'll have more clarity once we kind of get ourselves through the process of meeting with you, meeting with the CEFC, and kind of getting a sense from the community of where we are.
Makes sense. I knew it was hidden somewhere.
Yeah, it's definitely a piece of the puzzle for sure.
Okay, great. So I think that you were gonna probably move now into the individual school improvement plans.
Could I make a comment, just
Yeah,
a
please.
sort of overview comment? What's interesting about these is I think what you'll start to see next year is there'll be more like, those Russian nesting dolls, one inside the other. That will be the goal, that the sort of structure of these, not necessarily the formatting, because they're school-based and they should be friendly for the school-based, but the language, the categories should really parallel the district. You see that a little bit with the high school plan here. I think they kind of jumped on that. Most of this work for most of the schools happens kind of in the spring and a little bit in the fall. So, but I think again there's some good through lines and connections that are congruous with ours. I should just avoid that word altogether. And so there's some nice connections. And each school does have to have its own things that are sort of unique to it too. So, but I wanted to comment about that. I think I want to thank the principals. They do really good work on this, and they're all on board that these will actually be coming to you in the spring, next spring. So we're going to shift the cycle so that you can see these at the end of the year for the following year, kind of moving forward.
Can I just ask a question, actually,
Sure.
that had come to mind and I didn't ask? So do you know if this has always been sort of the process around the strategic plan that you put in front of us, which is this retreat that precedes it, that you guys, is this something that's just been, because I really liked that approach, and I'm curious if that's always been.
I wasn't here. I
I
can
don't
speak
know,
to
sorry,
my.
maybe you adopted it.
Yeah, my past experience is that you do need like a big chunk of time. Even Matt and Anita were there, and Meg too. Just the process of, we spent a long time on the vision statement, and at some point I think my coach, who you've met, Cindy, was there and sort of waved me off. She's like, "You need to move on."
Yeah, I don't think it was done in the format that you're speaking. I think it was done, but not as formally.
Yeah, and I was going to say to that it's really interesting because it's so different to take individual plans and to synthesize that information rather than sitting together as a group and really hashing it out. And I think you got some really quality stuff there. So it's really, I think that it seems as though that strategy was really important to having developed what you did. So
I think, philosophically, I really believe in we are a district first and foremost, and that, the quality of a district depends on that a little bit, and having this sort of district-wide view, because if we're not all kind of moving in concert, you can get real inconsistency school to school. And so if we want to raise the whole thing, then for us to really be clear all together about what the big picture priorities are. Every school is going to have its own unique needs, and I don't want to take anything away from that, but this work needs to be district-wide, I think.
sorry to take us back a little
No,
bit,
no.
but I just that can't come to mind. So if we are moving on, I would imagine that here there's nothing that you specifically want to say, right?
No, I think they're good. You've had the time to see them. If you have specific questions, I can attempt to answer them.
Yeah. That's why I asked that. I wasn't sure if the principals were going to be here. So I guess what I'll go through and ask if any of us either have questions or comments. Again, we know that Allison was not the main drafter of these, so I'm sure she can only answer to the extent that she can, but we can try. So Steve, do you have any questions or comments?
Only this, and I think Yakub kind of touched on it before. Obviously, from the general perspective, I think of the school committee are those things that we end up spending money on rather than, let's say, philosophical approaches. And so I think the last category in each one of these things are facility planning. And perhaps it will take time to flesh that out, to figure out what will be needed, if you will, with the brick and mortar aspects of each school. We've sort of reached the end of maybe the prior cycle with the completion of the ADA at Hastings. Obviously, there's a follow-on to that being the HVAC stuff, but at this point, I think we have to look out again in the future and say, okay, what is going to be needed on the brick and mortar side, because obviously with the financial constraints that we appear to have to be in the next few years, prior knowledge of it is important. And I think probably the first one is going to be boilers. So I just put that on the table. Maybe there can be the same kind of retreat of all the players in regards to what do we do, how serious are the needs, and when do we put them on a schedule. So that was my thing. I think the rest of it is pretty good. And in fact, the idea that the format of the setup was pretty much the same between all groups. And as a result of that, again, it gets everybody marching in the same direction.
Yes.
So kudos for that.
Yes.
Jane?
Yeah, I thought these were great. I especially liked seeing student representatives and parent representatives, and that was wonderful. And actually, I thought they were already mirroring the strategic plan areas for the most part. So I think they're. I wondered, the high school format is different, and I wonder if that was purposeful, or there's not as clearly delineated action items or goals.
So it's not quite as
Yeah,
granular.
and I
yeah.
just wondered if there was a reason for that, or
Yeah, I not that I'm aware of, but I can
Okay.
kind of follow up on that. Yeah.
no,
They are going through accreditation, so that could be a piece of it. That some of their work is predetermined from the outside for this year, so that's a piece
I
of the
see.
puzzle.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, they were great though.
Yeah.
Jakob?
Yes, I want to say thank you to all the principals for putting together these improvement plans. They're very thorough, and they are aligned with the goals. I guess you already talked about that with the Russian dolls reference. It would be nice if each plan followed a similar structure. Breakdown would be kind of. I'll be interested to it'd be easier to compare, for instance, all the elementary schools.
Right.
Side by side. What are they focused on? Because that will give us better understanding of maybe there are specific needs in specific buildings that we should look at. But overall, it looks very good. Thank you very much.
Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, just one. Certainly appreciate the level of detail that went into each of these. I guess my only real question is more high level. Are you able to speak at all about how these are circulated within the schools and the teachers? Is just primarily something that the principals put together and is done more at a leadership level? By
Statute, the school improvement plan is it's supposed to be the responsibility of the school site councils. So they have teacher representatives, parent representatives, and the leadership team, and sometimes student representatives at the older levels, right? So usually middle school up will have student reps as well. So those groups are charged with looking at the handbook and making recommendations for handbook change. And making recommendations for things that are more programmatic, and just sort of advising the principal, but then also helping with the creation of school improvement plans. Ultimately, the principals and the leadership teams at each school who know the school inside out and backward often do a lot of the drafting, but they share those with their site councils, and the site councils sort of vote them and then send them up to you. So that's should be how it's working. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think that they were great. They all definitely had slightly different formats, which, but they all spoke to the goals of the district. Just out of curiosity, so when do they begin the process of the preparation of this document? Like, how does, it might be different with each school, but I'm just curious because it's hard to put this together and present it for September 10th when school has just begun. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I do think there's work and conversation that goes on the prior year, and ultimately, like I said, I'd love to see the timeline back up so they kind of wrap up the year looking ahead to next year and have this all buttoned up before they go off for the summer.
Yeah.
Be nice for everybody, I think, involved. But I think there's a bit in the spring, and then usually they bring together site council to review, maybe make some suggestions and any final edits before it comes to you in the fall.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it was good.
Yeah.
Do we have any other comments or questions? Because if not, then if we can get a motion to accept the school improvement plans.
I'll move to accept the school improvement plans.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
500. And then we can move on to the budget development schedule for FY '27.
All right, Anita.
This budget season again. Exciting.
Seems like it's always on, isn't it?
Always budget.
It's officially budget season again. You'll see in front of you the budget planning schedule, similar to every other year. We have put in our budget development planning sessions, any finance committee meetings that we're going to be presenting at town budget summit, fall town meetings on here. If there's any questions in particular about any of these dates.
It's pretty aggressive, isn't it?
It's very aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very aggressive, but I'm committed to sticking to the timeline.
I believe that the town budget summit, that's a Monday, the 29th. It's in the evening, right, or the afternoon?
It is.
That one's in the evening.
In the
Yeah,
evening.
and that's great because last year there were a few, some of those meetings during the day. I would like to participate in, but during the day I may not be able to.
So one thing that I did mention at some meeting, and I don't recall, and when we were in a discussion with the town manager, is sort of more clarity around the timings of when, the need for school committee to be present is going to be necessary, because I understand, like, everyone's got a job and we all, but there's certain portions of the meeting where we really should all be there if possible. And I'm talking more specifically about the one that happens later, which is the full day meeting. That would be on budget. I'm just looking. Where is that called? Should be. Where is that? Is it the October 6th meeting? No.
The tri-board one. I don't think I have that on here.
Oh, that is not here because that is after you vote the budget.
Yeah.
That actually, there's that one that's that's later. It's after the budget is voted, there is a meeting that takes place.
It's after the budget is voted? Huh.
That we even have a date for
It was
that.
in January last year, correct? That's the
Yeah,
one.
maybe,
That's-
perhaps. But that's
In
curious.
preparation for the town meeting.
Right.
Yeah, in
right.
preparation for the
Yeah.
town meeting, but it just seems counterintuitive because there's some discussion that happens at that.
Well, there were orders that were given to the school committee after we had set our budget and had voted it as a value that was supposedly going into the warrant. And in fact, that created confusion.
So was that unique to last year? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the process is defined in the charter as to what we're supposed to do and when we're supposed to get it done.
Okay.
And so, that one came out of the blue. And in fact, I think a few of us had problems being at that meeting.
Right.
And so, anyway, the long and the short of it is, I think there may be the same issue here, and maybe we need clarity as to what is expected of the school committee after we vote a budget to have such a meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I would say even go further than that, and I mean, so long as there's no prohibition to that we would really want to not vote a budget until that meeting has taken place. And I don't know if that would mean moving up the meeting or if that would mean moving.
It's in the charter. What we have to do is in the charter, and everything is spelled out in December as to when these events happen. And so, unless the charters change, we have no reason or want, I would think, to change when we have to have an answer. That means that a meeting that is somehow supposed to change what we've already done and what we've done as a result of what the charter says we're supposed to do doesn't make any sense.
Right. It doesn't make any sense, and, it's not only counterproductive, but I would like to see if we can look into this a little bit more to see how we can avoid that, because, I can understand that there's going to be some asked potentially, and if that's the case, then it only makes sense that conversation happened before we.
Well, in my opinion, the process last year was a philosophical change in terms of the responsibility of the parties. And, and we saw the chaos that was created by it. and also, the reaction to some of these changes that came along. So,
And it forced us to be in a position that, certain things happened at town meeting that were not, not only not anticipated, we were caught off guard in some ways. So I'm sure that there can be some stipulation put here about how we want to, irrespective of, I agree that the
but you have
timeline
the
is in place.
opportunity, you and Allison have the opportunity to discuss this particular issue with the finance team
Right.
and clarify it so that in fact we don't get into the same box that we were in last year. At least I hope.
I guess one question I would have maybe for Steve and Sarah and folks who've been here in prior years is that meeting that took place in January, February, in the past, was it simply an opportunity for the schools and the town to present their proposed budgets or voted budgets in our case, so that the AFC and select board had a chance to ask questions about?
No, we
what was
have
on the table?
specific things and meetings that we go to based on what the charter tells us and deliver the budget to the Board of Selectmen,
Right.
Select Board.
Okay.
And so that, the whole process last year was out of sequence with
Okay.
what is written in the town charter. And if you're not familiar with what it says, please, read it. And I think the basis for what I'm suggesting is clarity
Yeah.
on this meeting that's scheduled at that time, because what's its purpose? Its purpose, to the extent that it was generated last year out of sequence, but its purpose was to try to influence what we want to present as a budget.
So the past, I have not, obviously, you've been here for many, many years. The past two meetings of those that I have attended were what you had initially stated, which was that our previous superintendent would come and do a presentation of our budget, and as did the town. And there was questions, but there was never any, asks for alterations or changes. It was more of, to all be on the same page. And that's what my understanding is, but.
Well, I guess I'll voice my opinion about this process. The process is for the school department to determine what it needs for money to maintain its school system at whatever level that we choose to do. And so this first meeting with the budget summit, if you will, at least we would hear from the other side of the house, what budget constraints exist for the town and what would be requested of the school committee to do. However, our obligation is to offer to the town meeting what we think is a requirement of the school system to maintain the quality of education that we create. And so, based on state law, our budget, whatever it is that we vote, is the number that goes before the town meeting as the first shot. The discussion last year was to change that and produce a different number than what we had voted as a school committee, based on all the presentations that we had up to that time, which I think were 3. And in fact, they're all public meetings. Everybody can watch them. They don't have to watch them at the time we have them, but they're certainly there and available for people to understand what we discussed, why we discussed it, what we built the budget around, what services we were going to maintain, and what changes we were going to make. And going into the budget that we created and voted, there were 7 reductions in staff, as I recall, which was in effect a reaction to previous discussions that we had with the select board and the finance committee. And so this process, historically has followed what the charter says. The delivery of information early in December, a public hearing with the board of, the select board on the same subject and why we do what we do, so that in fact it can be part of the process of developing the warrant for the town meeting.
Yeah.
Obviously, the result of the finance committee's review of our budget is a parallel recommendation to the voters at town as to what they see and how we did what we did. And so sometimes it's an agreement, sometimes it's a criticism. But the decision on what happens is, as I said, based on the budget voted by the school committee, which is the budget that in fact is listed in the warrant to be voted on, up or down.
Sure. I also would, so I think what you're kind of saying is that the September 29th meeting, which is supposed to be the initial town budget summit, should really be the place where the town should be coming to us with the budgetary constraints, so that at that point, the planning can be managed. The problem I had, which I think I'm just echoing what you're saying in a different way, is that when we went to the January budget summit, basically we were asked to go back to the drawing board, and this is now expending resources from everybody on this team to go back and do what they could have done 2 months or 3 months prior. So it's less about, for me, less about what they're asking and more so about when they're asking. But my other challenge with this is that having a date of September 29th makes it very challenging probably for them to come to us with any, real ask. So I'm trying to, I know that the town charter is what's going to be determining the dates. I guess I would have to have a conversation with perhaps the town manager to see where we
Yeah,
can figure this out.
and, historically, up till the point of last year, we managed quite well. And in fact, everybody knows that the select board meets year-round, we meet year-round, and therefore, a quote, time constraint doesn't exist. The preparation, by the way, I would say, of the September date for this discussion is a preliminary to setting the tax rate, which happens as a result of the all the input up to that point in time, which includes the return of money from the state in terms of the cherry sheet and all other things that happen. So, I guess I'm agreeing with exactly your point, that the suggestion that in fact somehow or another that meeting in January, after we voted the budget, after it begins to process relative to the town charter, that in fact just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So one of the things I would say also is that if we can, our September 22nd meeting, which is the initial presentation to the AFC, should also be an opportunity for us to appeal to them for recommendations as early as possible, given the debacle that took place last year. And so if this is the thought process, then it's important that information be communicated to us ASAP. Any other comments?
So the expectation is, and I would support that we will accept all feedback from the town. By the time November 25th is when the final budget book is supposed to be posted, and then we will vote on that and present that to the town. And I presume that we're trying to send a message that we will not revise that number after that budget is posted.
Well, that would be the logical thing, and in fact, historically, that there were liaison members of the Finance Committee either attending our meetings or watching the results of our meetings prior to that, so that they had information associated with their own discussions, because this whole process continues in parallel with the Finance Committee, the Select Board, and ourselves to do our things relative to our budget. The final arbiter as to whether anything is going to be voted or not is the input of the Select Board, the Finance Committee, and the School Committee for anything that goes on the town warrant. And so this whole sequence of events and decisions and outcomes has to do with the various public meetings that happen after the Board of Selectmen, in effect, receive our information. I think they have a draft budget in December as well. And then the full process of vetting this information happens up until the warrant is fixed, which is, I think legally is 14 days before town meeting, but they get closer to it beginning each week after the first of the year. So it's a tried and true process. It is established by the charter, and monkeying with it creates problems like we saw last year.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that's correct. I think that basically what we're trying to do is send a message that it's not that we won't do something, but that it's not necessary to go that route. We need it to be a lot cleaner. And the other piece of this that I want to highlight is we've talked about this several times, that there were 7 positions removed. Those were removed prior to the ask coming from the town. And so, is that correct?
Five
Five-
were removed before.
5 were removed before. So that, we did not have the opportunity to appropriately communicate that information, in my opinion, because just of the sequence of
Well, the
events.
finance committee knew that, and that's the reason why the finance committee voted in
Voted.
favor of our budget.
Correct, but I think that had we had the opportunity, I think it would have been much more clearly laid out, in a different way. So it's just better to refine this timeline from the perspective of the communication, so.
I will just say just 2 things in response to the conversation. One is that this year will present a unique challenge in that we'll be engaged in collective bargaining throughout the year. So we'll have to sort of budget in a way that keeps that in mind, sort of with room to make sure that we are doing right by our educators. And secondly, that, I think part of what happened last year is at the initial budget summit, some of the numbers being batted around in terms of constraints were completely unrealistic, absolutely unrealistic. When we looked at our rollover costs, they were not good. We couldn't even touch those without making massive cuts. So my hope would be that the AFC and select board at that initial meeting, and the AFC in particular, since this is their charge, have a realistic notion of what is kind of a constraint that allows us to continue to operate as a high quality school system. Telling us we need to work within 2.5% increase. Our operating costs go up by substantially more than that. The only way we can make that benchmark is by massively cutting teachers. So I think I want to be really clear that I am very committed to a financially sustainable budget, and we will do what we can to make sure we're being really responsible, but that the ask needs to be realistic. And it needs to not gut the school system, because I don't want that happening on my watch.
And it actually shows a level of irresponsibility, I'm sorry, when the ask is of this sort. If there's no known impact, if you don't understand the impact, then to ask something like that is unreasonable. So anyway, do we have any other comments or questions at this point? Okay, so where are we at now? We go back to the agenda. Okay. So we've got that schedule, and then now I guess we have to vote the delegate for the MASC conference, or committee rather, and a delegate and an alternate for the meeting that Steve always goes to every year.
Well, actually, you did that when we set up the various responsibilities,
Last year, that's right, because,
in March.
Did we have did we have an alternate though? I don't remember.
Well, I think what was asked at the time was anybody who wants to go, let us know,
Yeah. So
Um,
just to let everyone know, Steve is going, as he always does. I plan on going. Allison will be there. I know that anyone else who wants to go is welcome to. I think you can still go. I don't know.
You can still go, yes.
So if you want to let Lynn know, please do.
I wish
And-
I could.
Yeah. I'm not probably going to be able to be there 3 days or 2 days.
Yeah, it's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. For new members, there's usually a Saturday session as well. That's a training session.
I plan to try and attend at least one day, so that's my plan.
Yeah.
But Steve will be there.
Yeah, I think the second day is the one that has the most. They messed up the schedule last year so that the business meeting happened in the morning of the first day. And that was tough for a lot of people. But the educational pieces were mostly on the second day, which in this case would be Thursday.
Okay.
So,
I'll try to talk to
but
them.
I think they've already sent out the agenda. I think I've seen it, so,
Yes.
but it's online somewhere.
Yes, I can forward that in Friday update, just so members have it and can see.
Thank you. So if that is been, taken care of, what we can move to now is the update to the policy, LBC relations with non-publics. Did I miss something?
Do we need to vote? There's a
So
vote.
he's saying, Steve is saying that we've
Already done it.
taken care of it.
Okay.
So it's set.
Okay.
So now we're going to talk about the recommended update, and I think that was at the council's advice, so I'm gonna go
Yes.
ahead and let you
Yeah.
talk about that.
And again, this is kind of growing out of the conversation we had last time around approval of a private school in the community that just based on what we learned that there had been one in the past, but it had gone dormant for a while. We did look back. We found school committee minutes that showed that there was a vote that took place, but there wasn't a lot of information beyond just the minutes and the vote. And council's recommendation was that given that the school existed as an elementary school but ceased to exist for a period of time, that essentially they're sort of starting over again and that we should take another vote. But along with that, she said our current policy is not reflective of sort of best practice that's out there. And she offered up the MASC model policy, which just has a few more steps. I've already reached out to the director to say this is advice we got, that these are appropriate steps, and she is currently working on that, and has also reiterated the offer that if people would like to visit the school. So I will reach out and get in touch with you, and we'll see if we can coordinate a visit. It will be most important for me or Matt or both of us to go see it, since that's what's specifically stated. But if others want to visit as well, I think we would be welcome.
So given that you'll have a visit of the school, will the outcome of that be a recommendation to the school committee as to what we should do?
I think that is part of what this is suggesting, that the recommendation from the leadership team holds weight with you all.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to get at is that there was certainly an issue with the applicant to move quickly.
Yes.
And I think, if that be the cycle, then we're probably talking at least 2
Right.
weeks before we can deal with it,
Right.
right? Okay.
Right. She is very interested, if possible, at coming back at the next meeting. So we would work to schedule that meeting, our site visit sometime in the next week or week and a half.
So do we have clarity around where operations ceased or never begun, or?
I think that, so my current understanding is they have some enrollment now, currently. So they're taking things out of order,
Right.
and but part of that might be chalked up to the confusion around whether they
Sure.
really truly needed this or not.
I don't think any of us sitting here are trying to, we're trying to cause any
Right.
ripples in that. So hopefully it all works out. I still just have this question around, and I think I mentioned this to you, is what constitutes a substantial change? In this instance, council is advised that ceasing operation is substantial, and I would agree.
Yes.
But what else constitutes substantial? And that's more geared towards my question or my comment around the number of students. And so that is something that's important to me, but, I don't know if we have any definitive, like if she goes from her 20 students to 300 students, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I would look at it this way. Obviously, people can educate their children themselves, and not necessarily in the school setting, but just do it, right? So to the extent that the issues here are whether it's classified as a school, whether they get the benefits of it being a school and recognized by the school committee, to get town funds, state funds, okay, and whether the outcome of the education of the kids is that it's accredited, right? So in the meantime, if this has been transpiring, and maybe not even a kid from Westborough, but from some other school, other town, it sort of just happens and can continue as is, but gets none of the benefits of it being accepted by the Westborough school system. But meanwhile, obviously they want that because there's financial benefit to this setting. So I see it as, in my own mind, following the procedures correctly so that, 3 years from now, they don't have to go through the same thing that they're going because something happened and they didn't get the accreditation that they needed in order for it to be a school authorized by the town of Westborough. So,
Right, but there is some,
yeah, but we don't know the things you
implication of-
just asked.
Yeah, and there is some implication here of oversight.
Oh, yeah.
And, as circumstances change, so does the scope of your oversight, and how does that impact us, and what kind of liability is that on us? So those are questions I still have, and I'm
That's the
trying-
reason why procedurally we should do it exactly the way we're required.
I would also add, I like the new policy language. I mean, the one that's in the model policy. It refers to quote unquote checklist for approval of a private school. Is
Yes.
that also part of that?
It's not included in the policy manual, but when you look on the Department of Education website, there's an advisory on approvals of private schools by committee, and when you scroll all the way down to the end, there's like a list of to-do items, and I shared that with the director as well. So she has both this and that, and I think
Okay.
it basically includes things like, do you have a written curriculum? Do you have procedures for safety in place? Things like that.
Right.
So it's pretty fundamental stuff that you would want to see if you're going to approve a school. So that will be helpful for us if we go visit. And
So then you'll have that
Mhm.
prior to your visit.
Right.
Great.
Okay. All right, so do we want to vote to adopt the new policy then? Do we have a motion on?
So move.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
500, so we voted to accept that. And then we can move on to, is there anyone here who wishes to speak? If not, then we can go to school committee reports. Steve?
I have nothing.
Jane?
Nothing to report.
Yakub?
Same here. Nothing to report.
Tim?
Quiet night, nothing to report.
And I'm going to say the same thing. I have nothing to report.
Jerry has.
Oh, yeah, and I will get to Jerry, I promise.
So yeah, I do have a couple of things to talk about that I thought might be interesting for the committee. So first of all, obviously over the next couple of weeks, there will be open house taking place throughout the school district. So last Thursday we had open house at Westborough High School, and then open house at Gibbons, Mill Pond, and the rest of the elementary schools will be taking place over the next couple of weeks in September. Then relating to AI policy, which I thought might be interesting for the community, at the high school this year at least, the administration has rolled out an updated AI policy, and we did go over these expectations in grade-wide assemblies. And basically how the new AI policy works is that there are more clear expectations in terms of when students can use AI and the process for students reaching out to teachers in terms of what expectations are for certain assignments. So on some assignments, you can feel free to use AI for research, or you might need to cite your sources, whereas for other assignments, you explicitly cannot use AI. So that's just a lot more clear and hashed out for the students. So I thought it's something that might be of interest to you guys. And then the second thing that I wanted to talk about was increased security protocols at schools in terms of security, especially following the tragic school shootings recently. So this morning, actually, we had an intruder drill at the high school, and then the Westborough Police Department has increased its presence at the schools during the mornings, especially during pickup and drop-off. And then in terms of some things happening in the community, so we have the homecoming dance in around 2 weeks' time on Friday, and then after that on Saturday we have the homecoming festival and the homecoming football game, which is always great. And then the Westborough Lions Club is also doing a art contest for kids 11 through 13 about world peace. And that's all I have for you guys.
Thanks, Gerald.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Great.
How was that drill today?
That was pretty good. It's quite somber given what's been going on, but I think it was well organized, and our teachers did a great job of explaining what to kind of expect and going through the different scenarios and possibilities of what we should do if an intruder does come into the schools. So for instance, she spoke to us about how if you do happen to be outside your classroom in the hallway, the teachers aren't supposed to let you back in, so you should just find your way out, find a way to get outside of the school, which I thought was something good to know.
Excellent. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Jerry, so much. I guess the last item we have is the approval of the minutes from 8/27/25. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Any a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
500. And anyone want to make a motion to adjourn? I think that's it. Anything else?
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Any discussion around that? Nope. All in favor, 500. See you
Thank
later,
you.
folks.